Black Navy warrior detained at daughter's graduation. His SEAL brothers rally. The handcuffs bit into Commander Marcus Wilson's wrists as he stood in stunned silence, the graduation ceremony continuing around him as if his world hadn't just imploded. His daughter Ayana's face, searching for him in the crowd as she crossed the stage to receive her diploma, would haunt him forever. Campus security officers flanked him on either side, their grip firm on his arms as they began moving him toward the exit. 25 years of distinguished service in the Navy SEALs, 3 Purple Hearts, and the Bronze Star with Valor. None of it mattered in this moment. All anyone saw was exactly what the anonymous caller had described. A large black man who didn't belong and looked suspicious. "Sir, we need you to come with us now," the lead officer whispered harshly, trying to minimize the scene they were already creating. Marcus caught one last glimpse of his daughter on stage, her smile faltering as her eyes locked with his across the distance. The confusion blooming across her face as she watched her father being escorted out on what should have been the proudest day of her young life cut deeper than any wound he'd sustained in combat. "My daughter," Marcus managed, his voice low and controlled despite the rage and humiliation boiling inside him. "I'm here for my daughter's graduation." "You can explain downtown," the officer replied, unmoved. "We have a report of a suspicious individual matching your description." As they pushed through the double doors at the back of the auditorium, Marcus's phone vibrated in his pocket, unreachable with his hands cuffed behind him. The message that would go unread for hours. "Wheels up in 30. Brothers inbound. Hold the line." Shark, 3,000 miles away, retired Command Master Chief Calvin "Shark" Thompson slammed his fist against the mahogany bar, causing nearby patrons to jump. The San Diego establishment was a known SEAL hangout, its walls adorned with team memorabilia and faded photographs of operations now declassified. "What the hell do you mean he's been detained?" Shark demanded, his weathered face contorted with disbelief and anger. Jackson "Doc" Reynolds, still damp from his morning surf session, held his phone out so his former teammate could see the text from Ayana Wilson. "Campus security pulled him out during the ceremony. She says they cuffed him, Shark, in front of everyone." Shark's gaze swept the room, landing on 3 other men scattered throughout the bar, all former members of SEAL Team 6, all veterans of battles most Americans would never know had been fought. With a subtle nod, he beckoned them closer. "Reap." "Monk, Ghost," Shark acknowledged each man as they gathered. "Marcus is in trouble." Michael Reaper Ortiz's jaw tightened, the scar running from his temple to his chin, a souvenir from an extraction gone wrong in Fallujah, grew more pronounced as he clenched his teeth. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where a black SEAL gets arrested at his daughter's college graduation for being black," Doc replied, his medical training evident in his clinical delivery of devastating news. David "Monk" Chen, the quietest of the group and the team's former intelligence specialist, already had his tablet out, fingers flying across the screen. "Westridge University, Connecticut, local police social media showing increased activity, no mention of arrests yet." Thomas "Ghost" McAllister, his pale blue eyes sharp despite his 60 years, said what they were all thinking. "We move, now." "I've got a buddy at Pendleton who owes me," Shark said, already dialing. "Can have a C-130 fueled and ready in 90 minutes. Monk looked up from his tablet. "Commercial would be faster. I can have us on a flight in under an hour." "Then we move in an hour," Shark decided, the authority in his voice undiminished by retirement. "Everyone go home, grab your go bags. 1 change of clothes, nothing tactical. We're civilians now, remember." The men exchanged knowing glances. They might be civilians on paper, but the brotherhood forged in blood and sacrifice transcended any change in official status. "What about Joyce?" Doc asked, referring to Marcus's ex-wife. "I'll call her once we're airborne," Shark replied. "She deserves to know, but Marcus would want us there first. You know how he is about showing weakness, even to her." As the men dispersed to prepare, Shark remained at the bar, staring at the photo on his phone Team 6 after their final mission together. Marcus stood at the center, his arm around Shark's shoulders, both men grinning despite the exhaustion etched into their faces. "Hold the line, brother," Shark whispered to the image. "The cavalry's coming." In the holding cell of the Westridge Police Department, Marcus sat perfectly still, his back straight against the cold concrete wall. The posture, drilled into him since Bud-S training 30 years ago, was automatic in times of stress. His mind cataloged everything, the dimensions of the cell, the number of officers on duty, the timing of shift changes, the reaction of each person who realized a man in a suit that cost more than their monthly salary was sitting in lockup. He'd been formally charged with nothing. The words investigative detention had been used, along with vague references to reports of threatening behavior and campus safety concerns. But Marcus had been in enough hostile territories to recognize when someone was fishing for a reaction they could use against him. So he gave them nothing. No anger, no indignation, no fear. Just the steady, measured breathing of a man who had hidden motionless in muddy water for days, waiting for targets who never suspected death watched them from below. Officer Kimberly Chen, no relation to Monk, Marcus noted with grim amusement, seemed to be the only one uncomfortable with the situation. Twice now she'd brought him coffee and apologized for the delay. The sympathy in her eyes told him she recognized the injustice unfolding but was too junior to intervene. "Commander Wilson," she said softly, approaching his cell again, "your daughter is here." Marcus's impassive expression cracked slightly. "She shouldn't see me like this." "Dad," Anna's voice carried down the corridor before Officer Chen could respond. "What is going on?" "Why are you—" Her words died as she took in the sight of her father behind bars, still in his tailored navy suit, now wrinkled from hours in the cell. At 22, Anna Wilson had her father's height and her mother's delicate features, a combination that had served her well during her collegiate basketball career. Now, still in her graduation gown, she looked younger and more vulnerable than Marcus had seen her in years. "It's going to be all right, baby girl," he said, his voice steady. "Just a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Anna's voice rose. "They pulled you out of my graduation in handcuffs. Professor Winters is beside himself. He's calling his contacts at the ACLU right now." Marcus shook his head slightly. "No lawyers yet. I've got someone coming." "Who, Mom? She's on her way, but her flight doesn't get in until tonight." Marcus managed a small smile. "Not your mom, my other family." Before Anna could ask what he meant, the front doors of the station burst open and a commanding voice filled the space. "I'm looking for whoever's in charge of this clusterfuck." Marcus closed his eyes briefly, relief washing over him. "Right on time," he murmured. Shark stood at the front desk, his imposing frame drawing every eye in the room. Behind him, Doc, Monk, Reaper, and Ghost formed a semicircle, 5 men whose average age was north of 55, but whose combined presence made the room feel suddenly too small for everyone else. "Sir, I'm going to need you to lower your voice and explain your business here," the desk sergeant said, his hand drifting toward his service weapon. "Our business," Shark replied, his voice dropping rather than rising, a tactical choice that forced everyone to listen more carefully, "is Commander Marcus Wilson, United States Navy decorated SEAL and American hero, who you have detained without charge for the crime of attending his daughter's graduation. Sir, I don't know who you are, but Command Master Chief Calvin Thompson, retired. These gentlemen are Commander Reynolds, Lieutenant Chen, Senior Chief Ortiz, and Master Chief McAllister. We've all had the honor of serving with Commander Wilson. Now, unless you want the Pentagon, 3 senators, and every major news network asking why a naval special warfare operator was illegally detained while celebrating his daughter's academic achievement, I suggest you point us to whoever has the authority to end this disgrace immediately." The desk sergeant reached for his phone just as the station door opened again, revealing a gray-haired man in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 uniformed officers who looked significantly more senior than anyone else in the room. "That would be me," the man said. "Chief of Police Robert Mercer, and you gentlemen are creating a disturbance in my station." Shark turned to face the new arrival, sizing him up with the practiced eye of someone who had evaluated threats in 100 different countries. "Chief Mercer," he acknowledged with a nod. "We're here for our brother." "Your brother?" Mercer's eyebrows rose. "Figure of speech," Ghost interjected smoothly, stepping forward with an extended hand. "Thomas McAllister, we served with Commander Wilson. I believe there's been a serious misunderstanding today, one that we're all eager to resolve quietly and professionally." Mercer's eyes narrowed as he took in the group. "Let's continue this in my office." As the chief led Shark and Ghost away, Doc caught Marcus's eye across the room and gave him an almost imperceptible nod. The silent communication spoke volumes, positions secured, extraction imminent. Beside him, Anna watched the exchange with dawning comprehension. "These are your SEAL teammates?" "Former teammates," Marcus corrected. "Family." Meanwhile, Monk had quietly drifted to Officer Chen's desk, his unassuming demeanor making him nearly invisible in the commotion. "The call came in at 10:42 this morning," he murmured, his eyes on her computer screen. "Anonymous tip about a suspicious man at the graduation, claimed he was agitated and possibly armed. Dispatcher flagged it as high priority due to the school setting." Officer Chen jumped, startled by his sudden presence. Sir, you can't be back here. The campus security who detained him. Monk continued as if she hadn't spoken. They didn't find any weapon, did they? Because Commander Wilson doesn't carry in civilian settings, military discipline. I know they didn't, she admitted. Look, I think this whole thing is wrong, but I'm just a junior officer. You were the only one who treated him with respect, Monk noted. He won't forget that, neither will we. He glanced toward the chief's office, where raised voices could now be heard. Your body cameras, they were on during the initial detention. Department policy, she confirmed. Always on during response to calls, Monk nodded. We'll need copies, all of them. In the chief's office, Mercer was discovering that the gentle approach Ghost had initially presented was merely the opening gambit. Now Shark leaned across the desk, his patience visibly thinning. Let me be perfectly clear, he said, his voice low and controlled. Commander Wilson has served this country in ways that would give you nightmares if you knew half of it. He's protected ungrateful civilians like you in operations so classified most of the Pentagon doesn't have clearance to know they happened. And you have him in a cell because some coward made an anonymous call about a black man in a suit at a college graduation. Mercer's face flushed. We respond to all calls regarding campus safety with the utmost seriousness. The report indicated the report was bullshit. Shark cut him off. And you know it. Ghost placed a restraining hand on Shark's shoulder before addressing the chief. What my colleague means is that we believe the call may have been motivated by racial bias rather than any legitimate security concern. Commander Wilson was in a tailored suit, seated with other parents with an invitation and program in hand. The only thing that made him suspicious was the color of his skin. Mercer shifted uncomfortably. That's a serious accusation. Not as serious as falsely detaining a decorated war hero, Ghost countered, or the civil rights lawsuit that's being prepared as we speak, or the media coverage when people learn that in 2025 a black naval officer still can't attend his daughter's graduation without being handcuffed and humiliated. The chief's phone rang, providing a momentary reprieve. As he answered, his expression shifted from annoyance to concern. Yes, sir, he said, straightening in his chair. I understand. Yes, he's here now. We're working to resolve the situation. He hung up and looked at the two former SEALs with new wariness. That was the mayor. Should be expecting calls from the governor and two senators within the hour, Shark said casually. Monk works fast. Outside, Reaper and Doc had positioned themselves strategically, Doc beside Ayanna, providing quiet reassurance, while Reaper stood near the cell area, his eyes never leaving Marcus. Your dad saved my life in Kandahar, Doc told Ayanna softly. Carried me 3 miles through enemy territory with a bullet in his own leg, never complained, never faltered. Ayanna's eyes widened. He never told me that. He wouldn't, Doc smiled. Not his style. What else hasn't he told me? Doc considered her question carefully. That's for him to share if he chooses. But I can tell you this, in 20 years of war, in the worst situations humanity can create, I never saw your father lose his composure or his compassion, even for enemy combatants, even when others wanted blood. The chief's office door opened and Ghost emerged looking satisfied. Shark followed, giving a subtle hand signal to the team that everyone recognized. Mission accomplished. Chief Mercer appeared last, his earlier authority diminished. Officer Chen, release Commander Wilson immediately. The department extends its sincere apologies for the misunderstanding. As the cell door opened, Marcus stepped out with the same dignity with which he'd entered. He straightened his suit jacket and nodded once to Officer Chen before turning to his daughter. I'm sorry this happened on your day, Ayanna. She threw her arms around him, her earlier composure crumbling. I don't care about the stupid ceremony. I care about you. Over her shoulder, Marcus made eye contact with each of his teammates in turn, a silent acknowledgement of the debt he now owed them. When he reached Shark, the old Command Master Chief just shook his head slightly. No debt existed in their brotherhood. Never had, never would. Commander Wilson, Chief Mercer approached cautiously. We've reviewed the situation and determined there was insufficient cause for your detention. You're free to go with our apologies. Marcus regarded him coolly. And the caller. Will there be any investigation into who made a false report designed to humiliate a black man at his daughter's graduation? The chief looked uncomfortable. We take all reports in good faith, Commander, but yes, given the circumstances, we'll be looking into it. See that you do, Marcus replied, his voice carrying the weight of command that had sent men into battle. Because next time my brothers might not be so diplomatic. As they exited the station, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Ayanna, still processing the events of the day, looked at the group of aging warriors with new appreciation. Thank you, she said simply. All of you. "No thanks needed, young lady," Shark replied. "We're just sorry we weren't there to prevent it in the first place." "Where are you all staying tonight?" she asked. The men exchanged glances. In their haste to respond, none had thought beyond the immediate extraction. "We hadn't exactly planned that far ahead," Doc admitted. Marcus laughed for the first time that day. "Same as always, all action, no logistics." He turned to his daughter. "Think your old man and his decrepit friends could crash at your apartment for the night?" "Only if you tell me some stories about what you really did all those years," she countered. The SEALs tensed slightly, but Marcus just smiled. "Some stories, the ones that aren't classified, and the ones your mother wouldn't kill me for sharing." As they walked toward their vehicles, Ghost fell into step beside Marcus. "You good, brother?" Marcus nodded. "I'm good, but I want to know who made that call." "Monk's already on it," Ghost assured him. "You know how he is, like a dog with a bone." Later that evening, in Ayana's modest off-campus apartment, the six men relaxed with beers while she finished packing her belongings for the move back home. The conversation had flowed easily from shared memories to updates on families to gentle ribbing about advancing age and receding hairlines. But beneath the camaraderie, Marcus remained quieter than usual, something only his former teammates noticed. When Ayana excused herself to take a call from her mother, Shark finally addressed it. "Spit it out, Marcus. What's eating you?" Marcus set down his beer, his expression troubled. 25 years of service, 3 wars. Dozens of classified operations. I've faced death more times than I can count, and today I couldn't even protect myself from being humiliated in front of my own daughter. "That's not on you," Reaper said firmly. "That's on a society that still sees the color of your skin before anything else." "Is it?" Marcus challenged. "Or is it on me for thinking things had changed enough that I could just sit there like any other proud parent without having to watch my back?" The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "I'll tell you what it is," Monk said finally, looking up from his tablet. "It's on Professor Alan Winters." All eyes turned to him. "What did you say?" Marcus asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "Professor Alan Winters," Monk repeated. "Ayana's faculty advisor, the one who was supposedly calling the ACLU on your behalf." He turned his tablet so the others could see. "He made the call." The revelation hit like a physical blow. "That can't be right," Marcus protested. "He's been mentoring Ayana for 4 years. He attended her games. He wrote her recommendation for graduate school. And he called campus security this morning to report a suspicious armed black male who didn't belong at graduation," Monk continued. "I traced the call. It came from his office phone at 10:42 a.m., approximately 12 minutes after you arrived and took your seat." "But why?" Doc asked, bewildered. "What possible motive would he have?" Before Monk could answer, Ayana returned, her face flushed with anger. "Mom told me what really happened to my graduate school application at Princeton," she announced. "The one Professor Winters was supposedly pushing through his connections. It was rejected 2 months ago. He never submitted my recommendation." The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. "He lied to you about the application," Marcus said slowly. "And when I showed up today, he panicked," Shark finished. "Thought you might have found out and come looking for answers. So he had me removed before we could cross paths," Marcus concluded, the betrayal evident in his voice. "Used my race as a weapon against me." Ayana sank onto the couch, devastated. "I trusted him. For 4 years, I trusted him." Marcus moved to sit beside his daughter, placing an arm around her shoulders. "This isn't your fault, baby girl. Some people just aren't worthy of trust." "What do we do now?" she asked, looking up at him with eyes that reminded him so much of her mother's, fierce and determined despite the hurt. Marcus glanced at his teammates, reading their expressions. Shark looked ready for war. Reaper's eyes had that cold calculation that had made him the team's most effective operator in close-quarter situations. Even the usually calm Doc seemed ready to administer some non-medical attention to the professor. "We could pay the professor a visit," Ghost suggested, his tone making it clear what kind of visit he had in mind. Marcus shook his head. "No, we're not those men anymore." "Speak for yourself," Reaper muttered. "We do this right," Marcus insisted. "We gather evidence, we file formal complaints with the university, the police department, and if necessary, the Department of Education. We make sure he never has the opportunity to harm another student's future." "That's the long game," Shark acknowledged reluctantly. "But it doesn't give the satisfaction of seeing his face when he realizes who he messed with." A slow smile spread across Marcus's face, the same smile his teammates had seen before particularly challenging operations. "Who says we can't have both?" The next morning, Professor Alan Winters arrived at his office to find 6 men waiting for him. 5 stood at parade rest, flanking the 6th who sat casually in the professor's own chair, feet propped on the antique desk. "Commander Wilson," Winters stammered, his face draining of color. I heard about the unfortunate incident yesterday, a terrible misunderstanding. I was just telling the dean how outraged I was. Save it, Marcus interrupted, rising from the chair with fluid grace that belied his 50 years. We know you made the call. Winters's eyes darted to the door, but Reaper stood there, arms crossed, blocking the only exit. I don't know what you're talking about, the professor protested weakly. 10:42 a.m., Monk recited. Call from your office phone to campus security. Suspicious armed black male at graduation ceremony. Does that refresh your memory, Professor? You can't prove. We already have, Ghost interrupted, stepping forward to place a folder on the desk. Phone records. Security footage showing you watching Commander Wilson arrive and then rushing to your office. Witness statements from your administrative assistant who overheard your call. Body camera footage from the responding officers. And my personal favorite, Shark added with a predatory grin, the recording of you telling my goddaughter that her Princeton application was being personally championed by you, when in fact you never submitted it at all. Winters collapsed into the nearest chair, his academic arrogance evaporating under the collective stare of men who had faced far more dangerous adversaries than him. What do you want? He whispered. Justice, Marcus answered simply. You're going to submit your resignation today. You're going to admit to filing a false police report motivated by racial bias. You're going to publicly apologize to my daughter for lying about her graduate school application. And you're going to write a new, honest recommendation that accurately reflects her exceptional academic record. My career will be over, Winters protested. Should have thought about that before you decided to use law enforcement as your personal security against a parent who had every right to be at his daughter's graduation, Doc replied without sympathy. And if I refuse? Marcus leaned forward, his voice dropping to a register that had made hardened terrorists reconsider their life choices. Then the evidence goes public, all of it. The university deals with the PR nightmare of having a racist professor who weaponizes police against black parents. And then these gentlemen, he gestured to his teammates, will ensure that every academic institution in the country knows exactly what kind of man you are. The decision wasn't really a decision at all, and everyone in the room knew it. Later that afternoon, as Marcus and his teammates watched Anna accept her diploma in a private ceremony arranged by the university chancellor, a small attempt to make amends for the previous day's disaster, Joyce Wilson slipped her hand into her ex-husband's. They came for you, she said softly, nodding toward the former SEALs who stood at respectful attention as Anna received her honors. They always do, Marcus replied, squeezing her hand gently. I'm sorry I couldn't be here yesterday. Here now, that's what matters. As Anna walked toward them, diploma in hand and a genuine smile on her face, Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The incident wasn't erased, nothing could undo the humiliation of being handcuffed and removed from his daughter's first graduation ceremony, but there was healing in this moment, in being surrounded by both of his families as they celebrated Anna's achievement. Congratulations, baby girl, he said, embracing her tightly. I'm so proud of you. Thanks, Dad, she whispered, for everything, for showing me what real strength looks like. Over her shoulder, Marcus caught Shark's eye. The old Command Master Chief gave him a solemn nod acknowledgement of a mission completed, of a brother protected, of a bond that transcended time and circumstance. Later that evening, as they gathered at a local restaurant for a celebration dinner, Ayana tapped her glass to get everyone's attention. I want to make a toast, she announced. To my dad, the strongest man I know, and to his brothers who showed me what family truly means. She paused, looking at each of the aging warriors in turn. You all risked everything for each other in war. Yesterday you showed me that some bonds never break, even in peace. To brotherhood, Shark responded, raising his glass. To brotherhood, the others echoed. As the night progressed, the conversation turned to lighter topics, the tension of the past 2 days gradually dissipating. Ghost regaled them with stories of his grandchildren. Reaper and Doc argued good-naturedly about their competing business ventures. Monk quietly showed Ayana pictures of his daughter, who had recently been accepted to medical school. And Marcus, watching it all, felt a profound gratitude that transcended the injustice he had experienced. In the most difficult moment of his civilian life, his brothers had dropped everything to stand beside him, just as they had in the most dangerous moments of war. Near midnight, as the gathering began to break up, Marcus stepped outside with Shark for a moment of quiet reflection. Thank you, he said simply, for coming, for bringing the team. Shark shrugged. Never a question, brother, you would have done the same. In a heartbeat, Marcus confirmed, but still thank you. The two men stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the stars in the clear Connecticut sky. "You know," Shark said finally, "we're not getting any younger," Marcus chuckled. "Speak for yourself, I still outran Reaper on our morning jog. Only because his knee's acting up again," Shark countered with a grin before turning serious. "What happened to you yesterday, it shouldn't happen to anyone, but it does every day. I know. Maybe there's something we could do about that, use our particular set of skills for something beyond our own brotherhood." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm not sure yet," Shark admitted. "But we've spent our lives protecting this country from external threats. Maybe it's time we address some of the internal ones." Inside the restaurant, Ayana watched her father and his oldest friend through the window, their silhouettes outlined against the night sky. Two warriors, no longer in battle but still standing guard. She thought about everything she had learned in the past 48 hours about injustice and loyalty, about courage that transcended battlefields, about family that went beyond blood. And she understood, perhaps for the first time, the true measure of her father's life and service. He had never shared much about his time in the SEALs, always deflecting her questions with vague references to "just doing my job." But now, seeing him surrounded by these men who had crossed a continent to stand beside him, she glimpsed the reality behind his modesty. These were men who had seen the worst of humanity and still chosen to believe in something greater than themselves. Men who had faced death together and emerged with a bond that neither time nor distance could diminish. Men who, even in their 50s and 60s, would mobilize like the elite fighting force they once were when one of their own needed them. As Marcus and Shark came back inside, Ayana rose to embrace her father once more. "You okay, baby girl?" he asked, concerned by the tears in her eyes. "More than okay," she assured him. "I was just thinking about how lucky I am to be your daughter." Marcus smiled, the hard edges of the warrior softening in the presence of his greatest pride. "The luck is all mine, Ayana, all mine." Later, as they prepared to go their separate ways, the team back to their respective homes across the country, Marcus and Joyce to help Ayana move back to Baltimore for the summer, Ghost pulled Marcus aside. "This isn't over, you know," he said quietly. "What happened here, it's part of something bigger." Marcus nodded. "I know. Shark's already talking about what we might do about it. And I think maybe it's time we had a new mission," Marcus replied. "One worthy of what we've been trained to do," Ghost smiled. "Once a SEAL, always a SEAL." "Damn right," Marcus agreed. "Once a SEAL, always a SEAL." As they parted with firm handshakes and promises to reunite soon, Marcus felt a renewal of purpose he hadn't experienced since leaving active duty. The incident that had begun as a humiliating reminder of persistent prejudice had transformed into something unexpected, a catalyst for a new chapter in their collective journey. Whatever came next, he knew one thing with absolute certainty. They would face it as they had faced everything else in their lives, together, as brothers, holding the line against whatever darkness threatened those they had sworn to protect. And in that knowledge, there was both comfort and strength, the same comfort and strength that had carried them through the most harrowing moments of their service. A bond forged in fire, tested by time, and proven once again when it mattered most.